Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked.
Welcome back to the Equally Yoked Show. Honored to be with you tonight. Look, we've got some breaking news as of a couple days ago. But otherwise, I think this is important to cover this situation here when it comes to Jill Biden. Now, if you remember, Jill Biden was very supportive of Joe Biden, and these bombshell reports concerning his debate, concerning his performance, concerning the Democrats and what they did is quite wild and insane when you look at what she says about why Joe didn't get reelected, why he wasn't, all this information that I think is very pertinent to what we're discussing today. And this is the stuff that I believe has a strong memory hold on people when it comes to what happened back in 2024, 2023, 2022, the lead up until the election of Donald Trump for his second term. So let's look at this information. Dead Man Lives, welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Honored to be your host tonight. You say LA spent $16 million on 64 beds. What's the number per individual bed? There's a number there. I think it's like a ridiculous number of how much they pay. Spencer Pratt is doing pretty good in California. I'll say that much. He's doing really well. So is Steve Hilton. And you're seeing this back and forth with Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, which, by the way, if you're in California, who are you going to be voting for in the general election come November? But not only that, we have midterms. January 2nd, we're having some big things to look forward to. 250,000. Wow, that's appropriate for America's 250-year anniversary. That is bananas and rice, indeed. So, Jill Biden. We're going to look at Jill Biden and some information concerning this. We're going to be covering some other stuff. Not going to be a whole long broadcast about this. However, let's check this out. This is long hidden documents reveal first Trump impeachment was a total fraud. Okay, so it says newly declassified documents prove that the first impeachment of Donald Trump in 2019 to 2020 was a carefully orchestrated fraud. It was all concocted by Trump-hating deep state actors, that is a quote there, within the intelligence community who secretly conspired with Democrats in Congress to remove Trump from office to subvert the will of the American people who had put him there. Damning evidence was produced Monday, April 13th by Tulsi Gabbard. She sent criminal referrals to the Department of Justice aimed at two of the central figures who propelled the impeachment proceedings, accusing them of manufacturing conspiracy. The first is Michael Atkinson, who served as the Inspector General of the intelligence community at the time of the impeachment hearings, and the whistleblower who filed a formal complaint about Trump, his telephone call in July 2019 with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. So when it comes to this information that is coming out, we're going to play a wonderful clip by Charlie Kirk as well concerning this, what the media isn't covering. So Jill Biden, this is all interesting. We're going to be taking a look at this really quick. Why Joe Biden wasn't even elected in the first place, wasn't reelected in the first place. This is what she says happened. Again, there's a memory hold here. We saw that Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden. She wasn't even the primary. She wasn't in the primaries, elected as a primary. I know I'm getting that wrong. But anyway, she wasn't selected as the candidate. And she was immediately replaced after Joe pulled out of the race. This was somewhat of a surprise to some people, but this is what we saw. This is what she believes happened. And I think she's trying to, I don't know. I don't think this is fully honest here because this whole interview is filled with a bunch of lies. Or maybe she believes it. Let's take a look.
You said at one point in the book, people thought he was protected. He was living in a bubble, but he saw, the writing on the wall, the bad news everywhere.
He did. He watches news constantly.
So he wasn't living in any
He wasn't
bubble.
living in a bubble, no.
Why do you believe President Biden ultimately decided not to run in 2024?
Because he didn't have the support of the Democratic Party. And so he made the decision not to.
And so he met with his top advisors. How that day unfold?
Well, it was at the beach, and his advisors...
You have a house at the beach.
We have a house at the beach, yeah. And so many of them came in and you know, discussed it with Joe and offered their thoughts and opinions, and ultimately he decided that night. He said, you know, so okay, if we decide, if I decide not to continue, how will this roll out?
And the family still wanted him. You wouldn't give an opinion. But
That's right.
He was hearing from other members of the family,
Yeah.
run, Joe, run,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Our kids, you know, really wanted him to stay in because they were hearing from people, you know, in
This is interesting.
Philadelphia or people that weren't in the Washington bubble. They
Watch. She's going to basically, and then in the next clip, we talk about the potential of Joe Biden pardoning his son, because he said in the beginning that he would not pardon his son, Hunter Biden, concerning the damning information about this laptop from hell, as it has been dubbed. But you look at this interview where she discusses that the Biden family wanted him to continue. Why do you think they wanted him to continue? Here's the interesting part. Joe Biden pardoned his immediate family, 30 minutes prior to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And she says it on this next clip, which we're going to play for you in a moment, where she discusses the fact that they knew that the Trump administration, since the DOJ was, power was changing, and the DOJ positions, it all changed under Donald Trump. And so she said, you know what? The decision changed to pardon Hunter Biden because they were so confident in the fact that Joe could win the second term. Therefore, the DOJ would immediately, stop all investigation, subvert the investigation, and really focus all of their attention on Donald Trump. Yeah, I also heard that too. You say 3 laptops. I think there's 2 others. Some discussion on that. But you make a great point. You say, but after the debate, Jill and Joe had said that he did such a good job. And here's that clip. It's actually quite funny. But there's other discussions saying that Joe actually went to Jill and he's saying, I really messed up. Curse words there. I'm not going to say the curse words, but this is that clip here. And Joe Biden seems so lost.
I can't thank you all enough for staying and for being here and for all your support. Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lied! Yes. So, Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you because we have such a great group of support.
And I need you in order to beat him. You're the people I'm running for.
My goodness. That was a wreck, a train wreck. Everybody knew it. Even the Democrat Party, they knew this was bad news for Joe Biden, that if he could not, and speculation is saying that they knew that this performance wasn't going to go well. They had to have a contingency plan because of this. And here's Jill Biden talking about this very moment where after the debate, well, let's just say, not after the debate, but after the fact that Donald Trump had won, that they would actually pardon Hunter Biden. That the decision changed. She said, here, let's take a look.
President Biden had said that he would never pardon his son.
He did.
And then he pardoned him. Did you urge the president to think again about that?
Well, you know, Joe said in the beginning, I won't pardon Hunter, I won't pardon Hunter. And then
And did you say,
and then
Don't
the
say that.
Justice Department changed. And I think that the process was not fair to Hunter. But then when Trump was elected, things changed. And
By the way, she says the process was not fair to Hunter Biden. And you had one of his friends, Hunter's friends, I forget his name, but he was going to testify in full detail as to, and he did, as to what went on with these phone calls between Hunter and Joe Biden, who allegedly went under a specific name when these top leaders of these countries were on a phone call with Hunter Biden to make deals. This conduct that was done by Hunter Biden and dragging in his father, discussing these deals, and what happened during the trials or during during that whole debacle with Hunter Biden, you would see bombshell news come out with Hunter Biden, about Hunter Biden, and then you would see another indictment on Donald Trump. It was one after another. Anytime something happened with Hunter Biden, then you would see information about a new indictment. It was a summer of indictments.
we knew that he would target Hunter, and we just could not let our son go to jail on a charge that no one would go, no one has ever gone to jail for.
Did you urge the president to pardon
Oh,
Hunter?
gosh.
Yes, Devin Archer. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Devin Archer is his name. Testify in great detail regarding the phone calls, regarding the moments, the times that he had with Hunter Biden concerning this whole issue.
I truly supported it. I wanted him to pardon Hunter at that point, and I agreed with Joe.
President Biden, for the first time in history, also preemptively pardoned other members of your family. Why did he decide to do that?
I suppose for the same reason that he felt that they would be targeted.
Because the argument that has been said since Donald Trump was elected, especially from people like Tish James, where she was basically going on, and even James Comer. Or is it James Comer? No, I don't think that's right. James Comey. The two names are very similar. James Comey and Letitia James were saying that the Trump administration was going to weaponize the DOJ against the people who went after him. But when you go back to that time frame, again, there's a severe memory hold. And what I mean by memory hold, by the way, this is a removal of information, events, digital records from the internet. Literally impossible to go back and find any information about this. You try to look it up on even with the search engines, AI, and it'll be very difficult to find anything concerning this very this moment here, this moment in time concerning all this information. So you have to go back, either you saved some stuff or I don't know, you got it very difficult to find because the output will not be what you're looking for. So you'll get more recent information, which really discloses nothing. And so this is what Jill Biden's saying. They're going to go after the Biden administration. This is why I believe that Biden preemptively did these massive amount of pardons, especially the January 6th committee. But the identity of the whistleblower, a CIA analyst and registered Democrat, still has not officially been disclosed. He is not entitled to hide in the shadows of anonymity by law. Only the IG can decline to release his name, but this applies to no one else. Gabbard should identify him, particularly since he has no longer works with the intelligence. Moreover, this so-called whistleblower was not a whistleblower at all. It says here, as I explained repeatedly in a series of columns 7 years ago during Trump's impeachment, the complaint he filed against the president never qualified as a valid complaint under the whistleblower statute. It does not meet the two requisite conditions set forth in the law. That is, the alleged wrongful conduct must involve intelligence activity, and it must be committed by a member of the intelligence community. And the president is not a member of the chief intelligence community and has never been. So this is interesting. We look at the very few people who were talking about this during that time was, of course, none other than Charlie Kirk. He posted this in 2019. He says, "You want to know the truth about the infamous Ukraine call? You won't hear it on the mainstream media. Know the facts, you'll understand why this impeachment hoax is just another Democrat witch hunt." And this is the clip. This is the clip that he posted on his social media on X. Let's take a look.
And I think one of the things that he was so angry about was when Schiff ended up not using the transcribed telephone recording, the transcription itself, and instead had to make it up.
Yeah.
Because the reality of that transcript wasn't enough. So he had to dramatize it and make it very dramatic. And it's like, no, that shouldn't even be in the record,
Can we
the
even
congressional
talk about
record.
this phone call? There's nothing wrong with the phone call. The succession of the phone call goes as this. Starts as congratulations. Then the Ukrainian president responds and compliments President Trump for rooting out corruption in D.C., saying they did that in Ukraine. The whole idea of Rudy Giuliani, the first mention of Rudy Giuliani was said by President Zelensky. The first mention of it whatsoever. And the whole theme was about corruption. Then they critiqued Macron and Merkel together about how they're not giving any sort of assistance. He said, hey, can you give us some Javelin missiles? And then the president said, I need a favor. The favor was not about Biden.
No,
the favor was about CrowdStrike.
Exactly.
And I have not seen one honest minute of reporting on television. They all say he wants a favor to investigate a political opponent. He never said that.
Exactly.
He said, I need a favor to look into CrowdStrike. What was CrowdStrike? Foreign interference in our elections. So hold on a second. We have a president who's asking for a favor. Please stop interfering. The very same thing that we just had a 3-year taxpayer-funded hit job that really divided our country.
Yep.
And by the way, Steve Hilton, of course, he was a Fox News contributor, but now running for governor in California. I want to know who's living in California, who's voting for governor in this election. Steve Hilton, Chad Bianco, or any of the Democratic, candidates. I'm really interested to know that, because all this discussion back and forth with Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco concerning the fact that each one is calling for each other to drop out. But anyway, you say 121 Fresh. You say U.S. presidents can pardon a family member. The presidential pardon power granted by the U.S. Constitution is exceptionally broad and allows presidents to issue clemency for any federal crimes. Yes, but the question that comes into play here is what was it that he needed to pardon these members? It's always a very interesting thing. Pardons have been controversial, especially what Trump has done concerning the pardons immediately after his election. January 6 pardons. I think Rudy Giuliani was a part of one of the pardons. And so you have issues like this that Joe Biden pardoned I think it was 6 or 7 of his immediate family members, like 2 or 3 of his siblings, and then their wives. It's interesting dynamic there as to what this comes into, all this that comes into play. And of course, as Jill Biden is saying, that we just heard, she said, look, we believe that the Trump administration was going to go after. And that's an interesting way to put it. Go after. And you say, boy, do I miss that guy? Yes, same here. Charlie Kirk was spot on with his politics, because he was so connected, not only just because he watched news all day, that's not even the reason why. He was so connected with the everyday viewer, like we love to do. This is why I want more people to email the show, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. And by the way, this is just as a sort of just extra information. Why name the email for the show freedom@equallyyokeshow.com? Charlie Kirk's email, if you wanted to email their show, was freedom@charliekirkshow.com or charliekirk.com. And I just a nice little tribute there, because Charlie Kirk was somebody that really pushed forward the way that this podcast and the direction to get involved, because of how important it was for us as believers to get involved in politics. We see in the scriptures that we are to demand the welfare of the nation in which we live. You are to also be in subjection to the leaders and the authorities and the rulers of whatever country you're living in. However, if it defies the living God, you are to reject that authoritarian rulership. And this is what happened under Joe Biden. We saw massive amounts of attacks on churches, both Christian, both Catholic churches. And of course, we saw the mandates that came hard on churches in California. I live in California. You see still even a Governor Newsom lawsuit. I think $1.3 million fined to a church that is still ongoing. And so they're taking this appeal to the Supreme Court. Not the Supreme Court of California, but the Supreme Court of the United States, because of this issue, because of the mandates that Gavin Newsom was doing illegally in the state of California. And this guy is just wicked as all heck. So you see the leaders of churches that were saying, look, we're not going to bow down to the governor, to his tyrannical rulership. We're going to actually follow what God's word says and not close our doors, because Jesus tells us that he is the one who has the key to the doors that nobody can open, nobody can shut that which he opens, and nobody can open that which he shuts. It's the wisdom that we need to follow in God's command in his scriptures, to not lean on our understanding concerning this. And so this is why this is also important. We talk about this information here. What did Trump say? What did he do in this conversation with Zelensky? He suggested that the leader examine Hunter Biden's ridiculously lucrative business deals with the Ukrainian natural gas and firm Burisma Holdings, as well as later President Joe Biden on-camera brag in which he threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. taxpayer funds unless Ukraine prosecutor investigating both Burisma and Hunter Biden was fired. It appeared to be an overt and corrupt quid pro quo to protect his son and keep the Biden family financial gravy train chugging along. So there was nothing inappropriate. Charlie Kirk pointed it out. The DOJ criminal probe into this highly suspicious international business schemes. There's nothing inappropriate, nothing that breaks laws here. The whistleblower had no firsthand knowledge whatsoever of the phone call, this conversation. This is what was blown out of proportion here. He neither listened in nor read a transcript of it. He simply heard it from somebody else. This is what was so fascinating about this information that never came out from mainstream media. And all they did was to put a narrative in front of the American people in order for you to go against Donald Trump, that he is the villain in this situation. And this is why they were scared. They seen what the American people were capable of in actually making this too big to rig. It's just wild. So Joe Biden's, this is also what's interesting. Tapes. The release of Biden tapes. People are calling for the release of these Biden tapes. The DOJ department the DOJ announced that they would release transcript and audio recordings, which is known to have for the president to be incriminating himself. This is Joe Biden. And he's suing the DOJ to stop it from handing over the recordings to Congress and the Heritage Foundation, which long ago sought the tapes pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act. Again, this information that is coming out and what Tulsi Gabbard is, upon leaving her post because of her husband and all that we went over on this broadcast, is really revealing as to what the Biden administration was capable of and how they are seeking to hide and preserve the reputation that they hold. Meanwhile, you're looking at a rise up of the new Democratic Socialist Communist Party, Zoran Mamdani's. So this is what's interesting. You have Jamie Dimon, who's talking about Zoran Mamdani, meeting with Zoran Mamdani about the role of banks in economy. And he actually schools them on some information here, which is quite interesting. Found it fascinating to show you guys. Let's take a look. Here we go.
I met with the Mayor Mamdani the other day, and I said everything I wanted to say. But but one of the things I was saying, like, what do we do? Like, what does a bank do? And so I walked in the front door. We have a big flag in the new headquarters. I salute that flag every morning. I told him, I salute that flag every morning. And your parents came here for the same reason my grandparents came here, were mostly Greek immigrants who never finished high school, for the freedom and justice that this country means. And that if you opened up, America's borders, billions of people would move here to be American. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I told them, we bank cities, schools, states, hospitals, countries, mortgages, small business, and we do the best we can. We make mistakes. We pay our people well. They all get medical, dental, Pilates, and so we're good citizens. We pay a lot. We take care of people, and policy should be done well. So we announced this other thing called the American Dream Initiative, which is mortgages and affordable housing, helping small businesses, financial education. We have a lot of branches in lower income neighborhoods, teach people how to save money and how to open accounts. Work skills, which we've already talked about, which have to be done locally. And so we're just doubling down on what we already do, and we just set targets for ourselves. Can we do more? And so take small business, for example. We bank 7 million. We're going to make it 10. I'm convinced we'll get there. We have to gear up for it. We got to hire more people, more branches, get more small business bankers and things like that. And out of that, we get a lot of ideas that germinate that work. Sometimes they don't always work. But I just want to point out, because it may be the most important thing of all, is to reignite the American dream type thing, is I remind people that the Constitution is a legal document. But the principles on which it's based are the most important thing. Those principles and values are freedom of speech, freedom of religion, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
And what's fascinating about this is that you have some of these talking heads on left-wing media, such as I think it was MS Now, who's questioning the statements made by Mike Johnson about the Constitution. That it was God's. Actually, he was directly quoting the Constitution. This host, or one of the contributors, or whoever she is. Let me see if I can actually find this clip for you. Where she's questioning this clip of endowed by our Creator. So I need to look for this because this is great. And let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. This is the clip.
What about this passage from Mike Johnson declaring that our rights do not derive from government, they come from you, our Creator and Heavenly Father? Is this him putting God over the Declaration of Independence?
Okay, so even then, right, you have the other commentator who says, well, that's one way that it could be sort of interpreted, a benign way of looking at things. But the writers, the framers of this document were very specific especially in the intentions concerning this. And what Jamie Dimon here was pointing out concerning liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in these documents, where he lays it out fully, again, schooling Zohar Mamdani because of the bad policies. One, that New York is in for a bad, is in for a rude awakening concerning Mamdani, with what he's doing with housing, what he's seeking to do with tenants, and it's just getting, especially where he's continuing to tax more and more the rich. This block by block campaign where he discusses to transfer over properties of negligent property owners who don't remedy situations, transfer it either to let me see here. I have it here. I think I have the clip that I can actually pull for you guys here live. Because I think this is very important. It's very key to understand where the party sits, where they stand. This Democratic Socialist Party, of course. This idea is not new. Zohar Mamdani.
When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. And for buildings that have suffered chronic neglect, we will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves.
This is New York. And I think just as simple as this, interview was made out to be, I think he makes a very important point here concerning what the framers talked about this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Let's continue on here a little bit.
The pursuit of happiness to them did not mean, are you happy? It meant have a purpose. You could be an artist, you could be a farmer, you could be a military officer, you could be a caregiver. It meant to make the world a better place, to try to create equal opportunity for people. And we don't teach those values anymore. And they are the foundation that made this country great. And we made, and all these schools, I mean, I've looked at them now. You look at some of the colleges and even high schools, they don't teach a lot of American history. And you could say, in America, those values are still extraordinary, why 4 billion people come here. It doesn't mean we didn't have flaws. I don't know, I've read a lot of history. I haven't read one country that didn't have flaws, not one. And of course you should acknowledge them and try to fix them if you can. And but that's part of the American dream. Fixing the bottom 30%, lifting up everybody, creating equal opportunity. I think that would dramatically reduce polarization and anger, which you see all over the place. And so we're doubling down on that too. And we're quite unabashed about it.
So I think all these are just important data to ingest and understand sort of the position of people like Jamie Dimon, who's recently, I think, built a new headquarters there in New York. If I'm not mistaken, we're actually moving headquarters out of New York, one of the two. However, you make a great point. Like this show, as Deadman points out, subscribe to the podcast and email me your thoughts, freedomequallyyokeshow.com, equallyyokeshow.com. A little bit of a tongue twister there. So when it comes to issues of UFOs. We've been talking about this quite some time, and people are still, of course, interested in this discussion. What are UFOs? What are these things? We've seen many discussions concerning biologics. What indeed is there breeding between humans and these beings that are that are extraterrestrials? These giants. What is happening here? We're looking at the CIA looking to hunt down aliens. Multiple, outlets reporting this. Portals in the UFO documentation. Information that we probably will not see because of the fact that NASA is a government agency. Let's take a look. This is a clip here concerning portals. What do you make of this? I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the chat, and also email me, freedom@nuclearoakshow.com. Let me see here. I'm going to read some comments. I'll let this play out. Okay, one second.
And in today's world, that's really something. But even in these, even in some of the documentations that I'm seeing, there's a lot to do with even portals. And I'm interested in more information of that coming out as well. But even to be in a congressional hearing and have enough information to ask the question, is there breeding between these biological beings and humans? There's a there that needs to be answered. And I got a lot of heat from local papers at home and some folks, but we're just asking the questions. If someone is going to come to congressional offices and say that they have seen it, that they have been a part of it, and are read into these programs, then it's worth an investigation. And all of these agencies, even the contractors, when they are too big to answer to government, when they were too big to answer to Congress, the entity that created them and gives them funding, then it's clear that they're too big. And we have got to rein that in and have more accountability. So when it comes to, yes, UAPs rather than UFOs, this discussion continues to grow. Discussion continues to grow because it still brings information. So whether it's a distraction for the American, it seems like, I don't know, maybe only the U.S. is focused on this issue. You don't really hear much talks outside of the U.S. concerning this. You see the CIA accused of using Ancestry and 23andMe to hunt down alien bloodlines in millions of DNA tests, as the Daily Mail, which is not really credible, but you see also New York Post saying whistleblower claims CIA used DNA from Ancestry and 23andMe customers in search for aliens. They're looking for stuff, but this is interesting as well. And again, not so credible from the Daily Mail because of the information that they've posted, even concerning Charlie Kirk. Quite disgusting, but they say new biblical fears as declassified UFO files reveal angels in flight. And a lot of these files, a lot of what the internet is doing is they're actually combing through these files and say, look, these are actually balloons. This was already figured out long ago. Right, so this information about UFOs and the distraction is, interesting nonetheless. However, we must understand that deception is going to rapidly, is going to increase. Knowledge, AI, this AI revolution that we're witnessing before us is quite incredible. And so when we look at, yes, along with deception, we're also looking at things like pestilence, issues that are seemingly COVID era. This is just a sort of data point, what Google's seeking to do, but the repercussions concerning this is interesting. I just want to know your thoughts. I just found this to be interesting. I want to share with you. This is breaking. Google is planning
to release 32 million mosquitoes across Florida and California, the company has asked the EPA to for permission to proceed with the public given until June 5th to respond. The mosquitoes are infected with Wolbachia, bacteria, which stops them from reproducing and slowly collapses the wild population from within. Google's previous debug project trial in California's Central Valley nearly eliminated mosquitoes from 3 test sites entirely. A separate trial in Singapore cut dengue, I don't know how that's even said, cases by 70% within 12 months. Google has now released over 1 billion mosquitoes across 4 continents. This new proposal is the largest deploy in U.S. history. When you see that companies are trying to manufacture or, create, I guess, to imbalance how God had created or allowed nature to sort of flourish alongside humanity, whether Google is seeking to do something beneficial for humanity or to rather test something to see exactly how they can, I don't know. Rather than going into conspiracies, what does this bring out? Because we're looking at AI and what AI is doing to 2 sides of the spectrum. One side is pro-AI and pro-humanity on how this can benefit humanity. The other side is to utilize AI for power, for gain, for greed. So you say they already released mosquitoes for these reasons. Shake my head, but don't let that stop you from making a conspiracy out of nothing. There's no... look, you want to believe that companies have a good agenda in mind. But I think Deadman puts out a single name, a singular name that actually is just summarizes it all. You have people like Bill Gates who are heavily influenced in projects such as these to control the population. These issues aren't taboo. This is the very discussions that the World Economic Forum seeks to bring about when it comes to depopulation. These are what the elites talk about, the discussions that they have in their chambers, the discussions that they have in these, elite meetings concerning Project 2030. The implementation of these Project 2030 agendas, we're still, 4 years away from 2030, and what that brings about, we just don't know. And so you see Bill Gates not only involved with Epstein, but involved with a lot of the discussions in the interviews that he said leading up to COVID, after COVID happened. A lot of the people utilizing this event, this COVID event, to catapult their agenda, their globalist agenda, and the discussion concerning climate change. And it's actually funny because Donald Trump points out climate change in one of his Truth Social posts, talking about the hoax concerning this. So this is one of the interesting reports. It says RCP 8.5 is officially dead. The international community responsible for official scenarios that feed into climate modeling that are the basis for most projective climate research, the assessment of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has just published the next generation of climate scenarios. The future is not what it used to be. It says the Post commends the researchers who have brought climate scenarios more in line with current understandings. So this idea of the Greta Thunbergs and the, who else? Bernie Sanders, the Elizabeth Warrens, this idea of global warming, which, of course, they shifted to the climate change language that you've seen was being blasted all over mainstream media, that the world was going to end. However, you say that at this point you will have to be willfully ignorant and blatantly dishonest to deny climate change, yet you see this issue. It says, for the 21st century, this range will be smaller than assessed before. In the high end of the range, the CM IP6 high emission levels, quantified by SSP 5-8.5, have become implausible based on trends in the cost of renewables, the emergence of climate policy, and recent emission trends. What matters today is that the group with official responsibility for developing climate scenarios for the IPCC and broader research community has now admitted that the scenarios that have dominated climate research, assessment, and policy during the past 2 cycles of the IPCC assessment process are implausible. They describe impossible futures. Tens of thousands of research papers have been and continue to be published using these scenarios. A similar number of media headlines have amplified their findings, and governments and international organizations have built these implausible scenarios into policy and regulation. 2030 Agenda, World Economic Forum. You have massive amounts of countries who align themselves with this agenda, the CO2 emissions. You have Congress, men and women, who could not tell you these supposed high levels, I believe it's of CO2 that you're seeing that is being in these congressional hearings. They could not tell you what the actual number was. And so mainstream media and a lot of other outlets ran with this information. They amplified it and they said, hey, there's some issues here. We might be witnessing an Earth that is, we're going to call it global warming. This will melt the polar ice caps. This will destroy the world. Massive amounts of flooding, whatever. And they really tried to get you to believe this nonsense. So this is data. This is actual data from the scientists themselves. It's just fascinating that when you see how much they try to push these agendas on people, what else? What else is next? Guys, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the podcast. Email me your final thoughts, freedom@willielkshow.com. And look, I appreciate your guys' comments here. Some of the stuff you guys are addressing each other in the chat. You say at this point, let's say you say, dude, if you are not feeling the climate change over the years, you're crazy. I am 43 and I have seen this thing go crazy. Look, whether you're looking at, if you're talking about weather in California, if you're talking about the amount of fires, if you're talking about, I don't know, what the sort of evidence that you're pointing to, as far as if you haven't been feeling it, homeboy or homegirl, you say Manfred, I don't know if you're a girl or guy, I don't know. These issues of global warming, I mean, this goes back over a decade when this really began to take off. This idea that the earth was going to, the sun, all this stuff. When you actually look at the data and what is pointed out here, and probably go on this on another broadcast concerning climate change. I mean, I think that would be very boring maybe. But the data that is actually there of people that actually just simply look into the information concerning carbon, CO2, and the sort of danger levels of threat when you look at fossil fuels. And you can actually see here, I'll put this. This is the website that I'm looking at here. It's not some news article here, like Fox or CNN, whatever. Pinned in the chat. Go look at the data yourself. So they discussed this issue. These are the things that we shouldn't just believe, especially with everybody in the. By the way, yes, it's getting hotter in California, but every year has felt hotter. Every year it seems like it's hotter and hotter and hotter. It feels different. We know that weather manipulation is also a fact. Weather manipulation by either cloud seeding. We know people are trying to manipulate and control God's earth. The scriptures talk about this very, very clearly and vividly concerning man's ability to seek to do anything they so please when they are somewhat all in agreement. And I think the worship of the creation rather than the creator goes back since the beginning of time. Or rather, I should say, since the beginning of humanity. So when you see that people sear their own conscience, where they claim to be wise, yet they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immoral God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. God gave them into the lusts of their hearts and impurity and the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and they worshipped and served the creature rather than the creator. God gave them up to dishonorable passions. Women exchanged natural relations for that contrary to nature. We see this in nature, the evidence. And you have research into what? Trans mice? God tells us to hate evil. Hate the sin. There's a context. But you look at what God tells the believer to do in the psalm. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech he hates. That's what God hates. Okay, but this doesn't speak about the fact that maybe we're supposed to, I don't know, what people think Christians are, that we're just hating everybody. But we actually were sinners also. Yet we still sin. And we don't involve ourselves continually in sin. That's what Scripture warns us of. But we are to remember that we were also once sinners as well. So yes, we hate the evil that somebody may be committing, yet the issue is in fact with the heart of man. So, nonetheless, you say humans are naturally evil. Look, God's scripture tells us that he has written the moral law on our hearts. check this out. It says, for everybody, all of us who have sinned without the law will also perish without the law. And all who have sinned under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not the hearers of the law who are righteous before God, but the doers of the law who are justified. For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them on that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Jesus the Christ. And he goes on, talking about the law of this Torah that is given. This is the position that I hold to. Okay? We're all born. We're all sin. We're all sinners. We're all born into sin. And children aren't innocent. You don't have to tell a child to lie. You don't have to teach them how to lie. So your argument already falls apart. They will scheme. They will lie. They will cheat in order to have it their way. If you have children, you would know. Even if you don't have children, you have a niece, nephew, a sibling. Your parents don't have to teach you how to lie. It comes naturally, in fact. And by the way, you say, why didn't your God condemn slavery? I love how you'll just bring out not only one chapter, but you won't even look at the context surrounding the fact that God is issuing these statements in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, even Exodus concerning the Israelite. You look at modern slavery, what it's understood as is modern slavery. You have where the slave actually has no rights, little to no rights at all. What is that? You look at even slavery in America, which everybody likes to point to and say, oh, America is built on slavery. When the reality is, the ones who sought to understand Scripture honestly, you say in the context, he literally outlines how to do slavery. You don't understand the cultural context as to the slavery that is mentioned in the Scriptures. And so you're tying modern slavery to what the Bible talks about concerning slavery. Slavery, when you look at the cultural context as to why there are slaves in the first place, and people think sort of captives from war. People like to conflate the two. Talking about women, talking about the captives. Typically, what was in war, when you're looking at Israel, specifically what God has commanded with Israel, the ones who were captive were either women and children. The men were typically killed because the men were involved in the war. You wouldn't see women in the war. And so if women and children were captive, they were brought into the camp, yet these were given specific, rights. And it lays it all out. And so again, when you talk about slavery in the Bible, that God condones slavery in the Bible, and you simply read in context, you see that these slaves are given a lot of rights. But they're slaves in the first place because they are there to pay a debt. Yet if they love their master, they are... how does a slave love their master? Interesting. Yet even the follower of Christ is indeed mentioned as a bondservant, a slave. We're slaves to Christ. But in the best way possible, that we love our master, that we want to stay with our master. You say, how about no American style slavery? But nope, nothing on it. You say God could have just said no slavery, full stop. Again, the cultural context is that these people went into slavery. It's as if you just look at it in modern terms. We are all slaves. If you have a credit card, you are in debt to this company and you are required to work in order to pay this company off. Now, in the old days, how would you do that? You took a debt, you would pay it off by working for this company or this person, whoever you owed for. And they had rules also concerning this debt that is to be forgiven. Every 7 years, it's like you refuse to look at the whole counsel of God. You want to claim that you know what the Bible is talking about, yet you don't even understand the scriptures and the context surrounding the scriptures, context surrounding Israel being slaves themselves, that they had just been removed from the land of Egypt, 40 years that they were wandering in the wilderness. And by the way, when you're reading the scriptures, you have to understand that there is a particular audience for these said scriptures. You understand who the audience is and the application of the scripture. And so you also have to understand that the Bible, in some cases, are descriptive rather than prescriptive. You look at both the Old and the New Testament, you see this same idea that is put out there by God himself, that it is he who provides liberation. It's he who provides freedom. If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. That there is no slave, nor free. There is no male, no female, no Jew, nor Greek. You are all one in Christ, speaking to the believer. Issues that plagued humanity concerning this is not that difficult when you read the whole counsel of God. This is also interesting. You look at this passage here. It says, each one of you should remain in the condition in which he was called. Were you a bondservant when called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you gain your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. For he who was called in the Lord as a bondservant is a free man of the Lord. Likewise, he who was free when called is a bondservant of Christ. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. When you're bought with a price, you must understand that it's very important to the Christian that they are no longer bondservants to men, but they are a bondservant to God, therefore making you free. It's just crazy. So, despite that, the common argument about morality, and try to bring morality in the picture. If you don't believe in God at all, you don't believe in a higher power, whatever the case may be in your sense, then all of this is just a matter of opinion. Doesn't matter if slavery is good or bad. Just on what the culture decides of the day. Culture decides abortion is good, so be it. It's going to be good. Culture decides one day that abortion is bad, so be it. Then it's bad. But Christians hold to a moral standard that is above humanity's moral standard. This is God's moral standard. That is, all life is precious. There's no favoritism in God's world. Does not esteem one person above another. There's no favoritism at all. Exactly. Just as I said, you say no secular morality you say no, this is your argument. No secular morality is not based on culture. Then what is it based on? If that's your position. But you're being very vague when you say, if God says something is okay. So what is we already went through slavery. We already went through the context, at least some of the context. You can go through an exhaustive scripture reading of slavery and being free in Christ and being free for those who follow God. All the scriptures that you can bring up. You're very vague in your responses here, because that's truly what it is. Because secularism, the only standard for morality is the majority reasoning behind issues that plague society. Again, you look at abortion. They say that the life is precious when they're fully grown and developed, but then they disregard the life of the unborn. And you try to say and bring out the argument, well, what about the one who is, you got an elderly person who has Alzheimer's, can't really take care of themselves, has to depend on others. What about their life? And there's, again, inconsistency with their morality. So you just keep running around the bush and try to say, no, that's not right. It's not right. Anyway, I digress. Subscribe to the podcast. Email me your thoughts, freedom@equallyoakeshow.com. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And we can discuss this further if you want to. Email me, freedom@equallyoakeshow.com. We will be looking forward to our next broadcast, whenever that is. For me, it just turned Monday. It's 12:01. If you've got work, I've got work. Be prepared for the week ahead, because you got work. You got to get to work. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate you all. And God bless you. And God bless America.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Pretty incredible week in store. Oh, wow, we changed our lighting. It looks good. Good job, guys. Email us your thoughts, as always, freedom@charliekirk.com, and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. Candace Owens is doing an event with Turning Point USA this week at Rutgers and LSU, and then we have Ohio State University, so check it out at tpusa.com to get your tickets, tpusa.com. I will be with Candace Owens on Wednesday in the great state of Ohio, so I hope to see many of you. And then next week at Texas Christian University, TCU, so you guys can get your tickets right now at tpusa.com. That is tpusa.com. The big news is Donald Trump going to be arrested tomorrow. Sure seems that way. All public news reports, including Donald Trump's statements over the weekend, seems as if Donald Trump is going to be put in handcuffs tomorrow by the Manhattan District Attorney. We had Citizen Kane from the Citizen Free Press on last weekend, and we teased this, and we said, it looks like the media is getting ready. They're laying the groundwork. They're laying the foundation for what is to be an indictment. It is such an abuse of the law, but there are several takeaways here as we get this week kicked off, a historic week where a former president could be arrested in our country. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. Subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show podcast. We're about to get started.
Show.
That the first time in American history a former president is arrested. Sure seems that way. The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, is indicating, alongside Donald Trump's statements, that Donald Trump might be handcuffed, processed, fingerprinted in Manhattan this week. He would be the first former president in history to face criminal charges. What is in dispute? Did Donald Trump murder somebody? Did he burn down a department store? Did he do mass looting? Did he embezzle money? Did he short a bunch of stocks? Did he scam the crypto market? Did he falsify bank documents? Did he oversee the Silicon Valley Bank? Was he a chairman of Lehman Brothers? Did he do the Madoff scheme? Nope. Donald Trump made a personal payment in his own personal life while a presidential campaign was occurring regarding something with Stormy Daniels, of which it is very unclear what exactly is going on there, because Stormy Daniels in 2018 came out and said, yeah, we actually didn't have an affair. You guys didn't know that, did you? She came out and said that in 2018. Media won't cover that. But Alvin Bragg is coming out and saying that this is a campaign finance violation that needs to elevate all the way to the level of a felony. Let's catch you up on it. Play cut 2.
Former President Trump claiming authorities will arrest him tomorrow. He would be the first former president in history to face criminal charges.
The possible arrest related to a hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. You'll remember it happened in the run-up to the 2016 election. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has been investigating the case for years, and a grand jury is reportedly on the verge of bringing charges.
On the verge of bringing charges. They're saying an arrest is imminent. That they've been investigating this for years, but of course now that the 2024 presidential campaign is starting to heat up, the Manhattan District Attorney is getting to full gear, and they say as early as tomorrow, you could see Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, once the darling of New York, who saved Woolman Rink, actually purchased the Plaza Hotel, did the Hyatt deal, saved the Convention Center, one of the most notable philanthropists in the history of New York City. They want to seek revenge against him. And it's obvious why, and we'll talk about it. But let's build out their argument. Their argument is that Donald Trump in his own private life paid Stormy Daniels as a hush money payment as a way to try and influence the 2016 presidential campaign. This is beyond an abuse of the criminal justice system. Even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you are the most anti-Trump person, you cannot possibly justify that this is what the criminal justice system is for. This is not even a novel legal theory. This is a fiction of the legal code. Signs indicate that Bragg's plan is to claim that Trump's payments to Stormy Daniels were improperly classified as a legal expense. Now, even that would just be a misdemeanor if true. So to make it a felony, like Bragg has been saying, that it's a crime was committed to cover up another crime. And the theory goes that it goes a bigger crime, making this an illegal campaign contribution. This is such an abuse. It basically says any spending in your personal life is actually for a political campaign. And then it just begs the question, was Donald Trump selling our country out to the Chinese Communist Party so his cocaine-addicted son could make money and our national security could be compromised? Did Donald Trump smash a bunch of devices even though they were under subpoena and they just disappeared? Did Donald Trump engage in a summer of love, of looting and fire and arson? No, of course not. A city that is more dangerous than ever, and the local DA is going straight after the 45th president of the United States. Why is this happening? Now, many of you say, well, Charles, because they want to take out Trump before 2024. That's partially true. But there is a promise that was made, top down, and it's almost been a competition. It's been a competition between Letitia James and the Fulton County person and Alvin Bragg. It's a competition to seek revenge over justice, seared into the memory of the Democrat Party elite is how they felt that night in 2016 on election night. Not only were the expectations high, they were metaphorically measuring the drapes. They had their cabinet all picked out at the Kravitz Center. They were ready for what came next. What came next was supposed to be the seamless entrance into the destruction of America, the postmodern America, the abolition of the Republican Party, the first female president that would keep the neoliberal order going. The Supreme Court was supposed to be a 7-2 left-wing majority. Circuit courts were to be flooded with left-wing radicals and activists. The borders would be completely and totally wide open. We would enter the Paris Climate Accord. The Iran deal would be approved. We would destroy, finally, the American middle class. Silicon Valley would get everything that they asked. Wall Street would remain untouched. The muscular class would be pummeled. We would have a whole regime of anti-racism implemented in every single portion of our country. We'd have endless war invading Libya to Syria to Ukraine. War as far as the eye can see. We would add another 5 million green card immigrants, because why not? We invade the world, we invite the world. All of this was planned. It was ready. It was on a piece of paper. All they needed to do was beat the crazy developer man from New York City. And Hillary Clinton lost. And she lost in a humiliating fashion. It was a legit surprise. And you cannot ever properly capture the feeling of the Democrat elite when that occurred. The glass ceiling was not broken that evening. The crying, the despair, the drunkenness, the panic, the paranoia that the man who was down 10 points in the polls suddenly won that night, the weeping and the gnashing of the teeth, it is seared into the consciousness. It never has gone away. That night is the night that the Democrat Party said shall live in infamy. Regardless of how they did in the midterms, regardless of how they were able to implement Joe Biden, that memory of 2016 for the septuagenarian, octogenarian, Marxist, miserable
creeps like Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they felt as if time was robbed from them. They felt as if that was going to be the climax of the revolution, because you might remember, in the 2008 presidential primary, there was the Obama camp and the Clinton camp, and Obama brought in a whole bunch of other radicals and cronies that got rich, and they were able to run the government. And the Clinton camp still had some say. They ran the State Department, you had the Podestas, but they were really waiting for their shot to run the government. And they said, okay, fine, Obama, you get 8 years, but then Hillary in 16, this is it. We run the government in our image, just like the Clinton Global Initiative. We're going to get fabulously wealthy. We're going to take over the government. We're going to do it our way. And then this guy, Donald Trump, comes and runs a completely different type of campaign. It wasn't a Mitt Romney neoliberal campaign. It wasn't open borders. It wasn't free trade. And these people swore to themselves, we will have our revenge. It's not enough to defeat him. It's not enough to displace him from office. No. We need handcuffs. We need perp walks. We need orange jumpsuits. We need the demolition of his business. The cruelty is the point. We're going to take him down by any means possible, because that night was supposed to be the entrance into a new America. We were supposed to enter into a brave new world that night at the Javits Center. We were supposed to break through into a new chapter, a new eon where we run everything. The courts are taken over. The country will never go back to Republican dominance. And the man who everyone mocked and ridiculed and scorned at, who had a 1% chance of winning, according to the New York Times, turned everything upside down 180, and these people have not forgotten. This, more than anything else, is about revenge. It's petty. It's personal. But in the same place where they were supposed to be celebrating Hillary Clinton's victory, Manhattan and in one of the boroughs in New York, that's exactly where they want to take him down. And it's by no mistake this quote-unquote thrill kill is supposed to humiliate Donald Trump in the same city that he made a name for himself. They get off on this stuff. These people are sick. They're twisted. They find this sadistic pleasure. It's a fetish where they say, oh yeah, you wrote the art of the deal. Well, now you're going to have to write the art of how to get out of jail. That's how these people are. These are secular, miserable, joyless fanatics. We'll talk more about it in a second. There's a lot of angles here to unpack. That's just the first one. ReliefFactor.com. Check out 100% joy.